Kaveri engine afterburner tested. What's your opinion? Gaurav Pagare says, is making fighter jet engines that much more difficult when compared to nuclear reactors and weapons? If no, then I doubt whether our nuclear technology is indigenous. A certain nuclear research agency use have Russian training for its scientists for quite some time. Okay, first of all, Ayush Singh's question is about Kaveri afterburner tested. Kaveri engine. So the Kaveri engine is this indigenous engine that India has been developing for the past, I don't know how many decades, right? It is being developed at the Gas Turbine Research Establishment in Bangalore, GTRE, and India has spent almost no money on it. I mean, the Rafale deal, if it happens, it's like $30 billion, 35 billion, I don't know, 30-40 billion dollars. The total amount of money India has invested in the Kaveri program over the past few decades is like $500 million. So India doesn't really, seem to care about this. But so when it comes to the Kaveri engine was supposed to be the engine that the Tejas fighter jet will use. And the Tejas fighter jet program actually uses the F104 or whatever engine. General Electric 104 engine, right? Which jet engine does the Tejas program use? One second. Tejas jet engine. Tejas jet engine. F404, right? That's the one. So the F404 has an output thrust of 49 kilonewtons, dry thrust, and with afterburner, it's about 83, 84 kilonewtons. Okay? What's a Newton? Kilogram meter per second square. Forget about that. So the General Electric engine has a dry thrust without afterburner of 49 kilonewtons, and with afterburner, which is wet thrust, it's about 83, 84 kilonewtons. The Kaveri engine's dry thrust is also 49 kilonewtons. But for some reason, the General Electric engine has been used because the Kaveri engine's afterburner technology has not really been developed thus far. And even when afterburners were used, the wet thrust was around maybe 70 or something kilonewtons, but we want 80 plus. So that's been the story thus far. Now the news has emerged a couple of days ago that the Kaveri engine's afterburner has been improved and tested. And it seems like this time the wet thrust has exceeded 80 kilonewtons, which would put the Kaveri engine, if this technology becomes reliable, it would put the Kaveri engine essentially in a very similar league as the General Electric F104 engine. Right? So it's great news, but I'm not sure if it will be used, even with the afterburner working fine. I'm not sure if it will be used in the Tejas program. So India has already, I think, signed a deal with Safran, which is a French company, for the development of an Indo-French jet engine whose technology will be fully owned by India. That's fantastic. Safran already makes fantastic jet engines. So that obviously is just going to cost us some money, and then we'll get the jet engine eventually whenever it happens. But in the meanwhile, I've always said that even if we buy foreign jet engine technology, which becomes entirely our own, we should not kill the Kaveri program. We should continue developing the Kaveri engine at its own speed, at its own pace, in parallel, don't kill it off. And that's what it seems like is happening. So the Kaveri engine is quietly being developed in whichever way. And now the afterburner has been tested, and it looks like the afterburner test was a success. And it looks like the wet thrust is now in excess of 80 kilonewtons or around 80 kilonewtons, which is a tremendous improvement. So I think it's fantastic. So it gives us options, right? Even if the French thing, for whatever reason, doesn't work out, we will still have this. So it's great. But hopefully the Safran thing works out fine. Now the question by Gaurav is making jet engines, fighter or whatever, is making jet engines way more difficult compared to nuclear reactors and weapons. Of course. A jet engine is incredibly complicated. A rocket engine is super simple compared to a jet engine. Okay? A nuclear reactor is far more, well, it's not that difficult compared to the complexity and difficulty of making a jet engine, a high quality jet engine. A nuclear reactor is essentially you use fissile material in a controlled fashion to generate heat. That heat boils water and drives the steam engine. That's a nuclear reactor in very, very simple terms. Okay. Of course, it's not that simple, it's pretty complex, but not as complex as a jet engine. Nuclear weapons, once again, it's not that difficult. It's not that complicated. Rocket engines, ramjets, scramjets, cruise missiles, cryogenic engines, they are not as complex as jet engines. Okay. So the point is, our nuclear technology is entirely indigenous. Entirely indigenous, no question about that. Russian language training and all, I have no idea about that. I mean, in Baba Atomic, in the BARC, I know for a fact that in the 1950s and 1960s, you had to take Russian courses. I don't know if it's still the case or not, because in the 20th century, Russia was one of the superpowers, and a lot of the physics output of the world came from Russia. And they publish in Russian. They're not like Indian slave mentality who publish in English, right? The Russians published their research papers in Russian, not in English, unlike Indians. So if you wanted to access Russian research, you had to learn Russian. I'm not sure if that's still the case, but that's a different story. A jet engine is way, way more complex than nuclear reactors, nuclear weapons, cryogenic engines, ramjets, scramjets, all of that. A jet engine is way more complicated. Those turbine blades, they have to be made from a single crystal. Each turbine blade has to be a single crystal of metal, of whatever alloy you're using. You need advanced materials science for that. And not just that, those turbine blades need to have air ducts within them, which will take hot air out and whatever. It's very complicated stuff. It takes decades to develop a world-class low bypass turbofan jet engine. So it's way more difficult compared to what you're mentioning. And please be certain that India's nuclear technology is entirely indigenous.